big reason why we're so afraid of being awake at night is because sleep deprivation hurts. It's because it's so damn uncomfortable. I think the biggest thing by far is the fact that it's just so damn unpleasant and uncomfortable. If we were to drastically reduce how uncomfortable people feel, I think that would really help a lot of people. I think that would make recovery a lot easier. I think that would make the whole process go a lot smoother. Insomnia, as we know, is brought about because we're approaching sleep with a struggle. We are intentionally trying and forcing sleep to happen. So we're doing everything except letting it come to us. And when we're doing that, when we are engaging that sort of struggle, that's when we are wrestling. That's when we're really trying to force it to happen. But as you can imagine, if you spend all night trying to force something to happen, trying to think the right thoughts, trying to force your emotions to feel a certain way, trying to do the perfect breathing exercises or whatever it is, it's not going to be a pleasant 7 to 8 hours, however long you're in bed. You're going to be burning a lot of energy, and you're just going to be in a very stressed out, hyper aroused state. Whereas opposed to if you were just simply resting and be at peace with being awake at night. And so, speaking from personal experience and from the clients that I've worked with, the hangover the next day isn't nearly as bad.
So sorry to interrupt, but I have something to tell you about that I think truly, truly matters. And it is the Festival of Understanding that I so hope that you are going to be a part of. This is going to be a free 5-day event starting on March 17th, where every morning I'm going to give a 15-minute presentation that is going to be followed by 15 minutes of Q&A. And we're going to be talking about things like our new definition of insomnia, tokenization, which is a real centerpiece of the new NADA philosophy. We're going to talk about befriending beyond wakefulness and much more. If this sounds like something you want to be part of, then just find the link in the description. Did I mention it is free? And I think it's going to be especially valuable if you've been tuning in for a while and you haven't yet seen that shift, that click, that change that you're looking for. So again, just find the link in the description, register for this event, and I can't wait to see you in the first ever Festival of Understanding. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this very special episode. We have Coach John with us. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me, Daniel.
Anytime. Maybe actually welcome back, because you actually had a Talking Insomnia episode with Ali. So everyone who doesn't know John, you can check out that recent Talking Insomnia episode to hear John's full journey through insomnia. Now, with that said, John, you've decided to really focus on helping people who are martial artists and struggle with insomnia. Maybe tell us why.
Yeah, so I've like I told like I was saying last time the last time we met, I've had insomnia for 7 years, or I had it for 7 years, and during that time I started picking up jiu-jitsu. So I got really into martial arts. I've been doing it for about 5 years or so. And so that the connection between struggling with insomnia while trying to engage in this very demanding sport was something that was a little bit challenging to me. But the more that I progressed in my recovery, the more I found certain insights that helped in both fields. And yeah, I noticed that there are other people who I trained with who reported having some difficulties with sleep. Nothing I would ever classify as insomnia, at least not like what I had or what our typical clients usually have. But it was so interesting that the difficulties that they reported really rhymed with the problems that somebody who was suffering from insomnia would report. So I thought it was really interesting to hear the similarities there, and I thought that I could apply the teachings that I picked up from the sleep coach school and apply that to that demographic.
Yeah, no, that sounds wonderful. I'm sure this, as you said, you even within yours, relatively small group of fellow practitioners, you saw people that had like maybe not insomnia, but had like some little like issues with sleep that were similar and related to it. And so yeah, that's wonderful. Now, we're going to talk more on this topic. In fact, you're going to share some insights for anyone out there who's a martial artist struggling with insomnia. So yeah, just let us know what are we going to start with first, John?
Yeah, so the first one was something that we actually accidentally stumbled upon in a group call a few weeks ago, and you wrote a newsletter about it. You might remember this. It was funny. I was bringing up the topic of resting and how important approaching sleep with the intent of resting to remove any pressure. You misheard me, and you thought I said wrestling. And that, weirdly enough, just happens to coincide perfectly with the demographic that I've chosen to work with, because jujitsu and wrestling very similar, both grappling martial arts. But I think that this is also a very important. This for me, this might be the first thing I would teach any of my private clients. It might be the step zero, and the reason for that is because I think that the big reason why we're so afraid of insomnia, the big reason why we're so afraid of being awake at night, is because sleep deprivation hurts. I know we were, me and you had a conversation recently with some other sleep coaches, and we were trying to figure out the big origin of it. My take on it is it's just simply it's because it's so damn uncomfortable. And there are other reasons, there are other concerns as well. Like, what if I have some scary health issue down the line? What if I'm not going to be able to perform as well? And obviously, everyone suffering from insomnia has those fears at some point or another. But I think the biggest thing by far is the fact that it's just so damn unpleasant and uncomfortable. So if we were to drastically reduce how uncomfortable people feel, I think that would really help a lot of people. I think that would make recovery a lot easier. I think that would make the whole process go a lot smoother. And so the whole idea is that insomnia, as we know, is brought about because we're approaching sleep with a struggle. We are intentionally trying and forcing sleep to happen. So we're doing everything except letting it come to us. And when we're doing that, when we are engaging that sort of struggle, that's when we are wrestling. That's when we're really trying to force it to happen. But as you can imagine, if you spend all night trying to force something to happen, trying to think the right thoughts, trying to force your emotions to feel a certain way, trying to do the perfect breathing exercises or whatever it is, it's not going to be a pleasant 7 to 8 hours, however long you're in bed. You're going to be burning a lot of energy, and you're just going to be in a very stressed out, hyper aroused state. Whereas opposed to if you're just simply resting, then even if sleep doesn't happen, even the worst case scenario, you don't get any sleep at all, you're at least able to, your body's still able to relax and rest in some way, shape, or form. You're not expending energy. Maybe you're not getting restorative sleep, but you're at least able to be at peace with being awake at night. And so, speaking from personal experience and from the clients that I've worked with, the hangover the next day isn't nearly as bad.
If you've been resting compared to wrestling, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Even if, and even if, again, worst case scenario, if sleep doesn't happen, you don't feel nearly as bad.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. If we can implement that on, I think we can do that on the first night of recovery. If we can just cut the unpleasant hangovers from a 10 out of 10 to like a 5 or 6 out of 10 or something like that, and then I think that would be a massive tool that we can introduce to our toolkit right off the bat. And I think it would be of a huge benefit to a lot of people.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. Because then if you realize, okay, I didn't sleep that much, but I felt okay-ish,
Yeah.
then there's so much less pressure than to sleep, and it comes so much easier. And as you were speaking, I was like, oh, maybe it could be something like, keep wrestling to the mat, like wrestling belongs on the mat or something like that.
Yeah.
Specific.
Yeah.
Now, do you think, by the way, that martial artists in general are prone to kind of like problem solving, almost in a physical way, and like kind of driven, and approach things in that manner, like a little bit type A. Do you find that within martial artists, you think?
The more competitive ones, yes, for sure. I live in a very where I live. It's a very competitive area for jiu-jitsu. So you see a lot of almost everyone who's even moderately interested in competing at any level. They're interested. They do all of the, I like to call it, performance shopping. They'll do they'll chase the latest weightlifting fad, the latest supplement stack, the latest, and a lot of it is very well intentioned. Usually, almost always, you're going to be better off if you're intelligently trying to improve your training process. And that's not even applicable to just martial arts, but that's to almost every aspect of life in general. And they'll apply that same sort of type A problem-solving thinking to, let's say, if there was for a particular grappling position. It's like, this position is really giving me a lot of grief whenever my training partners put me here. What am I doing wrong? What can I do better? Yada, yada. And Daniel, just as well as I do, that if you apply that to, sleep, it's so counterintuitive. And that's partly why it makes insomnia so damn difficult, is because that is the exact wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
It's the inverse solution.
Now, well said. And I'm in my mind, I'm like seeing that you could probably do find a lot of people struggling with insomnia in the dojos of the world because of what you just described. As a lot of like competitive, hardworking people in there. Okay, very, very well.
More of it. I'm sorry to cut you off. I was going to say I'm surprised it's not more prevalent, to be honest, given the mindset that so many of us have.
Maybe it's because people don't talk about it.
Could be. Yeah, I kept it quiet, and none of my training partners had any idea that I had it. Now that I'm talking about, now that I'm making Insomnia to Peace bigger and I'm spinning it up, and people had no idea, which is interesting to think. Like, you would think that, I guess we could talk about that for a second, that, when you're suffering from, if you're in the middle of a speed bump and you just feel horrible and you think, oh my God, like I'm not doing nearly as well, but to everyone else, you apparently seem fine. So, yeah.
No, that's a great point. Very, very good point. Speaking of which, just take us further to maybe your next insights, John.
So we were talking about how a lot of these competitive athletes it can be very type A, and this can be a bit of a detriment to. And this is pretty common among all personality types as well, but the no sleep struggle before a big night. And this is something that affects almost everyone. Almost everyone has that issue of, or at least way more people have that issue of, I have X tomorrow. I have a really big event going on tomorrow, whether it's an exam, and with my clients, it's most likely a martial arts tournament, or some big fight or whatever. And they'll report not being able to sleep nearly as well. And which can be a bit of a bummer. Of course, if you're an athlete and you want to be as fresh and as restored as possible when you're undergoing this pretty arduous and difficult physical activity. And it's so I think that whenever I talk to the people now that I'm properly educated in this problem, I think that those people are suffering from very temporary and mild insomnia, just from the way that they're articulating the problem. I mean, it's the same exact thing. They're putting an enormous amount of pressure tonight. I have to sleep tonight. It's nothing else. Their body chemistry didn't drastically change just on that one night and one night only. And then, of course, like most of the time, they'll, if they don't get sleep that night, because they don't necessarily have a fear of being awake at night, they'll still go back to their regular sleeping pattern, and that's all well and good. But I think most people, and this doesn't just have to be applicable just to our martial artists. I think if they adopted the same sort of practice and mindset that we had, where we just simply we're not afraid of sleep not happening and letting whatever happens and letting sleep come to us, if it comes to us that night, I think that we would see a much better probability of that of getting that much needed sleep to perform the next day. So
Yeah. So essentially, like everything we teach in general, when it comes to like the kind of the big ongoing struggle with call insomnia, really could apply even to someone who has more of the kind of like temporary performance anxiety insomnia, let's call it that, before a big fight or a tournament or something like that, right?
mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think it's the same thing. It's like it's pressure comes from something, and whether it is like pressure from like, oh, I have to sleep tonight so that I can take care of
Mhm.
my kids, or if it's like I have to sleep tonight because of this thing, it really doesn't matter. It's like the I have to sleep that is important. And you know, you could do some really helpful work in sort of like keeping that person who occasionally has trouble sleeping before a big event. That
Mhm.
person may at some point go like, wait a minute, what if I don't sleep tonight? Even without an event tomorrow, and that could then kind of turn into insomnia,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, there's definitely the potential for it to be like a tinder for fire, for it to suddenly turn into this much worse thing. I mean, personally speaking, before I developed insomnia, I slept, in 99% of the time, I slept great. I had no issues. But the nights before I had a big exam for school that I had to do well on, those were the only times that I started to struggle with sleep. So, I mean, to your point, I could easily see somebody else going like, "Wait a second, like what if, even if there's no, what if there's no pressure, which somehow, paradoxically creates pressure for it."
Exactly right.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, that's another great point. Okay, very well. Let's hear the next one.
Yeah. So, again, following the same sort of pattern that we see with these type A personalities, I mentioned that these people are typically, optimization junkies, and I really don't think. I think that that's also paradoxically, even if their sleep was great, even if they didn't suffer from bad sleep a night before in a big like grappling match or something like that, chasing the latest sleep hack because of this pressure to get the perfect 8 hours of sleep. And if you don't get 8 hours of sleep every night, you're going to get Alzheimer's and you're going to die at 45 and all that, all that sort of stuff. That seems to be doing a little bit more harm than good. And I was speaking with somebody recently who, again, martial artist, and certainly did not have insomnia by any stretch at all. They were sleeping fine. They were sleeping 7.5 hours, whatever. And they were concerned that they were waking up. Just to give you the full story, this person consistently fell asleep within 5 minutes of hitting the bed. Something that a lot of our clients would salivate over, and he was concerned that he would wake up 2 to 3 times during the night for maybe 10, 15 minutes. So not a big deal, like it's. I don't. It wouldn't make sense for us to be designed for keeping evolution in mind. It wouldn't make sense if we were designed where we had to sleep 8 hours constantly, nonstop, and absolutely nothing could wake us up. And if you don't, then man, your health is going to take a massive hit. That just doesn't make any sense. So he was really worried about that, and he was so concerned about it. He felt that even on the nights where he would wake up, those nights where he apparently struggled with sleep, he wouldn't feel as good the next day. And I asked him, well, okay, well, what have you done to try to improve your sleep? And of course, like he had a laundry list of all these things that he's trying to do, and he's bringing up everything that Andrew Huberman has talked about, or anyone else who's well versed in the sleep hygiene sort of stack. And I mean, I told him, well, I asked him, do you know anyone in your life who has no problem sleeping at all? They can just sleep like a log. He's like, yeah, my dad. I asked him, like, okay, well, what sort of sleep hygiene stuff does your dad do? Just nothing. Not a single thing. And I understand that, like, in this story that I'm telling you, that it's a sample size of one, and that's fair enough. But it's the same sort of pattern I see, and I'm sure that you see over and over and over again. Um, so I don't think, and to be clear, it's not that I don't think that doing any of these sleep hygiene things, whether it's taking a supplement or reducing screen time before bed, I'm sure that there is some sort of chemical or biomechanical benefit to it. And if you're just passively let that happen, if you were like, oh yeah, oh okay, fine, I'll just put the TV away, whatever. But that's fine. But if you're doing it, if you're chasing it because you feel like you have to do it, or else, that's when it becomes a problem.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And then we again can really see the friend of yours here, who at some point starts becoming really frazzled and be like, I've tried 8 things and none of this works. Maybe something is really wrong with me. And then it goes from being like a kind of a nuisance for him to like a real struggle. So I think
Mhm.
really helpful to educate people. And by the way, like maybe a little detour here, but there may be another parallel to, let's say, martial art and sleep as well, which is uh, if you imagine practicing jujitsu, let's say, and you're incredibly attached to the outcome, you have to, let's say, win here. And if you don't win, you think that's going to be disaster. That means I'm no good. That means I don't belong here, and things of that
Mhm.
nature. You're going to probably be so tense and so focused on yourself that you can't really do well, right? So in some sense, it's like non-attachment helps there as well, right?
You mean the
If you
addiction to the
even as a
fun.
martial artist, being kind of like, yes, I've prepared, I'm ready, but now I'm just gonna like detach from this. If I win or not, either is okay. It kind of like it's some way you practice in an effortless way, weirdly, when you're not so attached to the outcome, and that helps with not only sports and martial arts, but I think sleep too, right? This non-attachment to the outcome, if you will.
I think so. And not only, and as you were saying that, I just brought up thought of another point that I didn't even have in my notes, that I could see. I'll just bring it up here because not only do you see the benefits of not being attached to the outcome are way more obvious when you're doing it in a competitive sense. When I say competitive, not necessarily maybe in a tournament, but when you're in practice, when you're sparring with your partners. I noticed there are plenty of times, I lost track of the number of times where I went to practice and I just did not feel good, because I was in the middle of a speed bump, and I just did not have the energy, didn't have the strength, but I wanted to roll anyway because I wasn't going to let insomnia live my dictate what I was going to do with my life. So when I sparred, I did it in a much gentler way, and I was totally at peace with not doing well or not tapping out my training partner. Just fine. I'm just gonna see it as an opportunity to learn, and I was shocked at how well I would do because when I was well rested and I would roll out. I'm known for being very aggressive and going very hard when I roll and stuff. And I think when I did that, I was so eager on the results that I would just I wouldn't be open to other opportunities that might have been staring at me in the face, but I just wanted to hit the move. I just wanted to hit the one move that I knew was going to work. But because I was in a position where I wasn't nearly as athletic because I was in the middle of this speed bump, I was curious and I was experimenting with other things that turned out that would have a way higher chance of success. I would be surprised at how often I could hit these moves. So I guess martial artists have that benefit where they can tangibly see those results, because most people go in their day-to-day lives, they don't necessarily see like, okay, did I do the, I mean, maybe I performed as well throughout the day, but they don't have any, it can be kind of soft. They don't have any hard metrics like, did I make this person tap? Did I make how many times did I make this person tap out? Normally I only tap this person once, if at all. But last night when I was really sleep deprived and not at my best, I was doing way better than I normally do. That's really interesting.
Yeah, yeah, no, I think that's super interesting, and I firmly believe that in all like the great athletes out there, they have this ability to at the same time be really kind of competitive and want to win, but at the same time be like unattached. We're like, well, if I don't, that's okay. I'm just going to go out there and do what I can, kind of like with open-mindedness, that flexibility. Very,
Yeah.
very interesting topic. But anyway, with that said, yeah, take us to your next one.
Sure. So I think that we have to make peace with the fact that discomfort is going to be a part of the process. Even if the most successful recovery story involves discomfort, and that's okay. The martial arts analogy here is, let's say that the best martial artist in the world, the best jiu-jitsu practitioner in the world, at one point in time, they were a white belt and they got beat up a lot, a lot, a lot, a lot. But you need those losses. You need the losses just as much as the wins, because if you had, let's say you saw a client, like let me ask you something. How weird would it be for you if you took on a client and from day one, they never had a bad night afterwards for like weeks or months? I imagine that would be very strange for you.
No, it would be. And I've heard like the full spectrum of stories from people who had like a very kind of rocky up and down zigzaggy path, and people who had
Mm-hmm.
more of an easier path. And I think both are possible, right? Both can lead to where we want to be. But to your point, I've actually had several times when somebody has had essentially like a very easy path. Like they worked with me for a couple months and it was very smooth and easy, but then they tend to come back later on and be like, Daniel, now I'm in a speed bump. And then I'm like, aha, yeah, this you kind of really need the difficult times for things to really consolidate. So to your point, I think it is in the difficult moments we learn the most, truly.
Yeah, and I think the practical reason for that, because I'm afraid of it sounding a little bit too woo-woo for anyone listening. I think it's because if we never experienced a bad night, we've never really conquered our fears over it. We've never really learned that it's not nearly as bad as we're making it out to be. So if you have like this stretch of like 5-6 months of great sleep, that's all well and good. If you've never had any of those bad nights, like I said, you're never gonna learn that it's not as bad as you're making it out to be. So I mean, you could, if you only had those good nights, you'd still have that cloud hanging above your head of, well, what if that happens again?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I think that's very, very true. And as you said again, the white belt, is going to learn so much from all those all the bruising up and losses they take. So yeah, that's a very, very nice one. I felt where there was somewhere I was thinking of going here, but I think it escaped my mind. So yeah, so let's say I actually I don't know how many points you have, John. So I'm just gonna keep going until you're like, oh, that was all. But yeah, take us to your next one.
Sure. Let's see what else. This one. I think this might be my last big point. Then maybe we can explore some of the nuances of the others, or whatever, however else the conversation unfolds. But yeah, this is more just something I noticed on my recovery that I had another insomnia coach tell me about, where the most stressful part of my day, the time of the day where I would put in the most amount of work, way more than my day job or way more than training, was that moment right before I went to bed. And the way that they refer to it as, because this coach suffered from insomnia as well. They said, I know the feeling when you're right at bed and you hear that ding, 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 like it's a boxing match about to start. And I'm like, that's it. It shouldn't feel like you're about to compete and potentially get really hurt. Like if you're in a match with somebody, there's a possibility that you could get very hurt. And it shouldn't feel, when you go to bed at night, it shouldn't feel like, you shouldn't have your adrenaline hyped up like it's through the roof. You shouldn't be in nearly as much danger. You shouldn't feel like you're in nearly as much danger as if you were about to have a professional fight.
Yeah,
And you shouldn't feel like that because you're not in a professional fight. You're not in a scary situation. It's your bedroom. It's your bed. Like, it's objectively like one of the safest places you could be in. And it's just, I don't want to say if it's not really interesting, but it's more unfortunate that that's the state of mind that so many people suffering from insomnia have come to view their place of rest and relaxation as this horrifying thing. But the good news is that even if they have adopted that practice, and even if they just seeing their bed at night is a big trigger for them, that can be unlearned, or rather, we can learn that we've just adopted this silly fear and that we can overcome and we can come to enjoy being in that we can really enjoy and relish that time that we spend in bed.
Absolutely. And that in some way ties into your first point about like resting and wrestling, that we want to, when we go to bed, it's prepared. We want to be prepared for resting rather than like preparing for wrestling with the ding, the gong going off. That really, really helps. And, one thing that came to me as we were speaking here was the question of, on your end, like as like the sleep struggle unfolded for you, the insomnia faded away. How did it impact your jiu-jitsu, if at all?
As it improved, as I went through my
Yeah,
recovery.
or I'm kind of, or more like, after, like, were there things you learned from like the struggle with sleep that impacted you as a martial artist?
Good question. Well, I'm still very interested in applying the the general, the more abstracted NATO framework to other difficulties and other stresses in my that I'm going through in my life, that aren't nearly as bad as insomnia. But I saw how effective it was, and I'd really be interested in seeing how it applies to not only just sleep or aspects related to sleep or jujitsu, but to different parts of life in general. But in terms of jujitsu, hmm, I don't offhand. I'm not sure if I have a big answer for that. Because I was so stubborn and intent on going to train, even if I was very sleep deprived, which was definitely, definitely did me a lot of favors. I'm very glad I did that. Um, but I don't know. Yeah, I'm kind of surprised I don't have as much of an answer, but maybe that just goes to speak to how that the belief that if you don't sleep, that sleep is that much of a deal breaker. If you don't get it, then that means that that's the end of the world.
Yeah.
I mean, has my jujitsu improved? Sure, but I'm also at a point where I've been doing it for a number of years, and I think a number of things are starting to click for me. Just around like this 5 year mark, where I'm starting to get really good at a few certain things, whatever. But I don't. I think that's just more to me not giving up and me showing up consistently, as opposed to me, getting sleep. It's not like the moments out. Let me put it this way: it's not like the moments that I would when I started to get into recovery. I became a world champion or something like that. Just I started to see piece by piece improvement as time went on.
Yeah. No, that's super nice to hear. And you, in fact, you already told us this kind of insight around how, when you were nights after choppy sleep, when you felt really sleep deprived, and you were like, well, I'm just going to go into this sparring round as like, we'll see what happens with flexibility and openness. And you actually saw that you performed better than you did when you were kind of like rested, and you were like, okay, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna win, like, easily with this one trick,
Mhm.
right? So I'm sure there's a lot of like those type of insights around, when we're kind of like flexible, open, unattached. We actually find things happening easier for us. But yeah. So
And I ran by. Oh,
yeah,
sorry to
yeah.
cut you
No, go
off.
ahead. Go ahead.
And I ran that by my coach. I thought it was really interesting because the first time it happened, I was like, that was interesting, but whatever. I could call it a fluke, whatever. And then it consistently happened. I think by like the third time I brought that up with my coach, I said, even though I don't feel nearly as well today, I hit a lot of stuff that I normally don't do, or that I just did much better than I expected. And my coach, who doesn't have insomnia, but also deals with issues of recovery. Maybe he has an injury, and he can't train as hard, or maybe for whatever reason he's just tired. He said, "Yeah, I know that happens where you're those days that you can't go 100%. It can be very beneficial to your training because you'll see these other opportunities open up to you. And you can find stuff that you can quickly add to your game plan just because you're approaching sparring with a very different mindset."
Yeah. Exactly. Wow. Very, very well said. So, yeah, we're so people in the audience who are like, martial artists in particular who are like, hey, I think I want to connect with John, see what he's up to, maybe work with John, where should they look for you? Where can they find you?
Yeah, so if you should be able to just pull up Insomnia piece on Google. I'm on you'll find my website there. I've also got a YouTube channel. I've got Instagram. It should be pretty easy to find. Once you find one of my places, you'll see the links to all the other places. And yeah, anyone who knows how to Google should be able to find me pretty easily.
Sounds great. And we'll put a link, of course, in the description as well. Well,
Thank you.
super nice chatting, John. And we'll look forward to talking sleep, insomnia, martial arts with you sometime soon again.
Sounds good.
Okay. Bye, everyone. Hi there, it's me, Coach Daniel. And I wanted to say thank you to everyone out there who is spreading the word. You know what I've noticed in the last 6 months to 12 months or something like that is when I ask people how they found us, one of the most common answers is somebody told me on Reddit. And every time I hear that, it really warms my heart. It makes me so glad to hear that someone went out of their way to tell a fellow human about the Sleep Coach School. If you're one of those people out there spreading the word, I want to say thank you so, so much. And if you're not, then maybe you'll see an invitation in doing so, or you can simply hit the like button or hit the subscribe button. That alone helps so, so much in getting our teachings out there and helping more and more people in the world. That was all I want to say here. Thanks so much for tuning in and can't wait to see you again.